Well, hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Beyond the Borders. Today I will take you back to another country that I have discussed on several occasions. Well, okay, only two. But that country is Turkey. As I have listed in a previous video, its president, or shall we say sultan, has been listed as the third worst dictator. I'm recently deciding to change this move and moving him up to number 4, thanks to my realization that Kimmy, yes, Kim Jong-un, that guy Kimmy, is runner-up to Bashar al-Assad. So he is now back to number 2, and Erdogan is back to number 4, where I placed him first. Why am I so silly? Ugh. While Mr. Erdogan has been upgraded, there's not a whole lot I can say about him. Well, at least now. There was once a time, in fact, where Erdogan was pretty much praised by the rest of the world, because in 2002, when Erdogan came to power, Turkey was in a deep, deep economic crisis, with spiraling out-of-control inflation and foreign debt. Erdogan came in, basically, to save the day. In fact, Turkey's economy was so bad at the time that the Turkish lira, Turkey's currency, was valued at more than 1 million to the US dollar. Yeah, that's not good. That's like Germany 1922 levels. And we know where that led. Not only was Erdogan in the early part of the first decade of the millennium able to guide Turkey out of the crisis, he also guided Turkey into a stage where Turkey became a fully fledged emerging market, along with countries like China and, of course, the recently fallen Brazil. Of course, between 2002 and 2017, Turkey experienced amazing economic growth at values that were even higher than 10% a year at certain points. This growth, while it has brought millions of ordinary Turks out of poverty from the state that they were in during the socialist Kemalist days, yeah, not good then, has come at a price. And that price, of course, is heavy foreign debt, which is never good, especially an emerging market to have. You see, unlike other countries like China and Mexico, Turkey never really invested in a manufacturing base, because without a manufacturing base, growth becomes hard to sustain, and you could have problems. In fact, Turkey has big problems. Instead of the manufacturing model, Erdogan preferred to choose the construction model. This meant millions of lira or dollars or whatever used for various infrastructure projects, including transportation and running water, that improved the lives of millions of Turks. And of course, this included some rather bizarre mega projects like these huge bridges that don't really matter. Yeah, even Turkey has a bridge to nowhere. What do you know? This economic strategy is not recommended for any country, and in fact, it gets worse. Ugh. In recent years, Mr. Erdogan has sadly systematically dismantled democracy. Isn't that a funny theme? Like Poland and perhaps Brazil? Yeah, the world is a dark place these days. Sorry, it's not funny. Now, the Turkish economy, which was once controlled by various technocrats and policy experts, is now run by Erdogan's personal cronies that have no idea how to run an economy and are more concerned with his strange and rather scary version of Islamism, which does not run an economy well. I'll explain that later.
Now it is time for our quiz segment with me, Wesley, the producer of the show, and Sam, your wonderful
The star.
host. All right. Now, last week
You had some silly questions.
The quiz segments now are made up beyond the borders country. So in the past, we've determined that it is a
Southern Hemisphere and a democracy with 5 letters.
And a democracy with 5 letters called Dubeli. And now we will determine if it is what?
Well, if it has a, I don't know. How about this? If it's a manufacturing economy or a commodities economy, which is Brazil.
Brazil, okay.
So I guess the odd
or
will
how
be.
about if the money is worth less or more than the US dollar?
Okay, that's easy. So more will be even, and less will be odd.
Yes. Okay. Ready?
Okay. Here we go.
How many states does Australia have?
One, two.
How many states does Australia have?
Does this include territories?
It's just states.
Okay, just states. That's 6.
6. All right. Which of these dance styles is associated with Spain? The waltz, country line dancing, clog dancing, and flamenco dancing.
Well, that's obvious. Flamenco.
Flamenco. Where is the northernmost point of land in the world?
I think that's somewhere in Canada, right?
Canada?
Ellesmere
Siberia, Greenland, Norway.
It's Canada.
Okay. Oh, you got that one wrong. It's actually Greenland.
Oh.
Wait, that makes sense. Greenland is much further up than Canada is.
Well, the northern point of Canada is close to Greenland.
Yeah,
I guess
Greenland's
not
further up.
quite.
So you got 1,
2.
2. We'll do 2 more. 1,
Okay.
2. Okay. So out of 5, you've gotten 2.
Yes, out of 3.
Which region of Spain is Barcelona in?
Catalonia. That's obvious.
Catalonia.
It's been in the news.
All right, you got 3 out of 5.
Okay,
And for 4 out of 5, Croatia and Slovenia border what sea?
the Adriatic.
Yes, that's correct. All right, so 4 out of 5 means that it's
Worth more than the U.S. dollar.
That it's more than the U.S. dollar.
Sounds like the euro, and with the pound, but not for long. This trend became even worse after the failed military coup that almost ousted and even assassinated Erdogan in 2016. Well, I'm not going to go into the conspiracy theories about that coup. It was a very dark moment for Turkish history, and Turkey became a lot sadder of a place right afterwards. Meanwhile, these foreign companies that had been investing in Turkey for many years all of a sudden started pulling out. In response, Mr. Erdogan, in his typical style, kept on borrowing and kept on adding more and more foreign debt to the point where a lot of these bills are coming due, and it will hurt. In fact, many Turkish companies are on the verge of bankruptcy. Yeah, total bankruptcy. And when major companies are flirting with total bankruptcy, you can see where everyone else is heading. Not good. Like, imagine if companies like Apple and AT&T and the big banks went bankrupt. Not good. A lot of this risk of bankruptcies by Turkish companies comes from the renewed decline of our old enemy, the Turkish lira. This, of course, is caused by many of the trends I have listed before. However, there is one more part of economics that Mr. Erdogan gets an F. Not a D, he gets an F. And that is interest rates. In more normal economics 101, the higher you have interest, the more likely you are to make inflation lower. Well, because the Quran, the holy book of Islam, says that interest is a sin right up there with adultery. Adultery? Oh dear, that's all terrible. Aye. Mr. Erdogan has refused to raise interest rates, even though pretty much everyone else says he better do that. And thus, Turkish inflation is now spiraling out of control yet again. How funny that these trends keep coming back. They just keep coming and coming and coming and coming! Well, Mr. Erdogan has finally been convinced, well, in the last couple weeks, that interest rates better go up to a whopping 24%. Now that's even higher than in the 1980s farm crisis in the United States. This is probably too little too late, and Turkey's economy is headed for a big crash. In spite of all of these mistakes made by Mr. Erdogan, somehow the Turkish economy kept powering through all the way until last summer. Well, that changed in August, when the Trump administration placed sanctions on Turkish officials for holding Pastor Andrew Brunson under house arrest. Of course, if you don't know about Andrew Brunson, he was an evangelical pastor who had been living in Turkey for many years, who was all of a sudden arrested on these bogus terrorism charges. I've never imagined a pastor being a terrorist. What kind of world is he living in? Thus, because of this, the United States has not been happy with this, and Mr. Trump, under pressure from his evangelical base, finally agreed to sanction Turkey. And the Turkish lira fell even further, thus cementing Turkey as not only a troubled economy, but an economy in a full-blown crisis. Ah! Now, however, with Erdogan's proxies promising to end this period of prodigality, including one of his own cronies, his own son-in-law, there is hope that one day Turkey will come out of this crisis. Of course, it's not certain. Mr. Erdogan's legitimacy could be in doubt, especially if economic growth stops, which it almost certainly will, and he might even have to turn to the dreaded International Monetary Fund, which would cause him to lose face among his voters, which would be the end of him. So, whatever happens next, the next few months or years will be quite tumultuous for Turkey, and I hope they get out, with or preferably without Mr. Erdogan. Good luck.